The original version of this video was uploaded to Jason Verney's YouTube channel, where it and many other videos, podcasts, snippets and films can be found. That channel can be found at youtube.com/Jason Verney. This is the Not So Korean podcast. I am Jason Verney. As you probably know, we started this podcast back in 2021 and used to record this live in UK's Koreatown itself. That's an area in and around New Malden. Yes, that's the largest Koreatown and Korean community in Europe. These days, we bring you such episodes and therefore information and interviews from various places in the world, including Korea itself. In this episode, we are going to talk to Joe McPherson. Now, if you have heard of Zen Kimchi, then you already know the name Joe McPherson. He is president at Zen Kimchi Experiences, but it's a rapidly growing tour operator in South Korea. So they deal with the dark side of Seoul tours, Seoul food tours, and Joe has had a varied life, but he's a foodie that specialises in Korean food, but also loves food of all cultures. In this extensive interview, you'll hear him discuss his time over the last 2 decades in South Korea. You'll hear about his businesses, including 2 restaurants that he's run. Again, an award-winning tour company. He's also hosted, produced, directed TV and radio programs, and he also runs a podcast. There's the Dark Side of Seoul podcast, Zen Kimchi podcast. There's a lot of stuff that Joe does. And we actually met and sat down in Chiang Mai. And there's a lot of stuff that we talked about regarding South Korea, or Korea, North Korea as well. We spoke briefly about topics that we've covered on this series already, like the dog meat ban. We spoke about eating certain foods. We spoke about Anthony Bourdain. We spoke about his brush with Bernie Sanders. We spoke about all kinds of stuff, but it was really good to sit down and discuss all these subjects. And yeah, I hope you enjoy this interview. This is a Not So Korean podcast. I am Jason Verney. In this episode, we speak to somebody who I know from about a decade ago. Back in London, we met, and we've also met in Seoul. We are now meeting in Chiang Mai, Thailand. For people out there, they might already know the name of Zen Kimchi or the Dark Side of Seoul, but we'll get onto that in a little while. And apologies if you hear any noise. We're underneath a fan or at a lovely guest house spot here in Chiang Mai. And let's, I'm going to put these questions to Joe and see what we can cover. So, yeah, great meeting you again, Joe.
Great seeing you. I was really surprised that you were here when I came into town.
Yeah, that's it, because you were actually in Bangkok briefly, and I thought, well, he's not coming to Chiang Mai, clearly. So
no, I've been trying to get to Chiang Mai for 20 years.
And that's quite a while.
Finally, I'm here.
That's great. Well, it took me 15 years to return to it and then realise what Chiang Mai had to offer.
Yeah.
And of course, one of those things that Chiang Mai has to offer is food, amazing northern food, but also other food and Western food. And you've been here a few days, and let's just touch on that. What's your experience so far of the food here in Thailand? I mean, yeah, how have you enjoyed it so far?
Well, I've always been a fan of Thai food, but I want to go to Chiang Mai because I always heard it was the best of Thai cuisine. It was different from most Thai food you've had. That has really been verified. I intentionally did not do much preparation. I wanted to be surprised, and the food here is so different than what people most know as Thai food. The flavors are so intense, the herbal, and I've really just it's blown me away. It's blown me away. I've been doing every meal that's been Thai my whole time. It's been good. It's very lots of. I mean, it's not as spicy as the Southern cuisine, but it has spices.
Yes.
Yeah, full of flavor.
Probably mostly spicier than gochujang.
Yeah.
Different kick to that kind of spice.
A whole different type of kick.
Yeah. And it's quite interesting. When I've been in Seoul and Korea, when I had Thai food there, and actually if you have any food from, let's say, Vietnamese or Indian restaurant in Seoul, they kind of Koreanize it a bit with little gherkins or banchan style sort of a side dish or whatever you call it.
Yeah, Vietnamese restaurants, they remove anything that has color in it. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they're kind of the gray soups, and they don't even use cilantro because generally the Korean public does not like cilantro.
Oh.
Generally.
So it's very bland thing. It's a bit like the clothing sometimes in the career of 15 years ago that I remember anyway.
Yeah, everything's kind of homogenized and just made safer for the Korean palate.
Yeah, and the cars and what have you as well.
But it's changing as more Koreans travel and more Koreans are familiar with real Vietnamese cuisine. We're starting to see a lot more authentic places get popular. Authentic places have always existed. They've just only been frequented by Vietnamese. But now more Koreans are going to actually more authentic Vietnamese and Thai places.
Okay. Well, actually, so let's start with the basics about Korea and what took you to Korea or Asia the first time at least 20 years ago.
The general answer I give is airplane. Brought me to Korea. I actually went in university, towards the end of university, I fell into studying Korean history by accident. I needed the history credits. Took it because it was available, fell in love with it, so I took more and more of it. I really got into Asian history. I would have become an Asian studies minor if they didn't make me graduate. Then after that, I went into the tech industry or after graduation, and that was right when the dot-com bubble was popping. So I couldn't find work for a while. And so some friends of mine were teaching English in Korea. I just got freshly divorced, and it was like, okay, all signs are pointing to I should go to Korea. Did that. I was planning on just spending a year. The original plan was I was going to become fluent in Korean in 1 year and come back and work with Hyundai in America. No. But after my first year, I realized that I really liked it better in Korea. I also noticed that I saw a lot of change, a lot of stuff happening in just 1 year. And I said, well, in my lifetime, this is where something's going to be happening, and I want to stay here and witness it.
So it's almost like you predicted soft power and Korean culture change rapidly. Maybe that's what was going through your mind, perhaps. I don't know. A
little bit, but not really that consciously. I felt that Korea was going to be much bigger one day. Was going to be the hot place one day. I felt that it had all the elements to be there. It's just everyone was romanticizing Thailand and Japan, and so Korea was kind of, I joke like Korea's tourism slogan should be, when you've gone everywhere else, go to Korea. That's kind of how it was.
That's a good thing. Yeah, because I can relate to that myself. Like 12, 13, 14 years ago, and I got into Korean culture. Everyone was talking about North Korea, Japan as a place to go to, Thailand, and I kind of wanted to focus on that, so I completely get that. And I know that when you studied back in the days when you were in university or college, you studied a bit of music-related things, which has probably come into play with your audio when you've done podcasts, which we'll get onto in a bit, but also telecommunications and other things. So I was just quite interested how your later life, it kind of it seems to be ticking the boxes of lots of things that you studied.
I was always trying to find a way to bring my passions into whatever work I was doing, try to channel it. I've always wanted to do something creative with my life. And yeah, I had a background in piano and music. My original dream was to be a Broadway composer or movie soundtracks composer. That fell through because I didn't cotton on to music school that well. But I thought, well, if I was going to change majors, I would go into broadcasting. That was good. That was really very valuable for me. While I was still in college, I worked in the local television station. Started off as in the crew as a camera person. Worked my way up to director, which that's a very stressful job too. Very stressful job is live newscast directing, but fun. Very high energy, very adrenaline rushing. And I learned from that. Also, before I came to Korea, I briefly, for a few months, 6 months, I worked for a political talk show, the Tom Hartman program, where we introduced a little segment from by then a unknown Vermont representative, Bernie Sanders. We called it Brunch with Bernie.
Wow.
Every Friday, and that was kind of fun because he was unknown at the time, so he would answer his own phone, and then after the show, my phone would ring at my place, and I'd be like, "Hello," and he's like, "Hey, Joe, this is Bernie. What'd you have for lunch?" It's really funny.
This isn't Korean related now, but do you ever? I mean, you don't have any contact with him now? I know this is ages ago, but would you, if you got in contact, would he be willing to speak to you?
It was so long ago, and so much stuff has happened since then. I was just happy to have been involved and just see that he was kind of the real deal. Because when I worked for the show as a producer, I had to talk to a lot of people in Congress, try to get them on the show, and he was the only one who answered his phone, the only one that really took us seriously. The one who took us the most seriously. We've had others that were pretty cool, but yeah, some were total dicks. But I learned a lot from that. I still, Tom we still keep in touch a little bit, but other than that, no. That I pushed. I got that bug or that itch scratched working that show because I used to be very political. Working that show really cured me of being political at all. I do not like discussing politics at all, really. I don't like doing it anymore.
Well, that's a whole different ball game when you move to Korea, because obviously Korean politics is very different to where you're from.
Right.
It has its similarities, but now it wasn't long after you were in Korea. Well, actually, I don't know how long it was after you went to Korea that you started Zen Kimchi, which essentially started as zenkimchi.com.
Right.
And I wondered why you started that. Obviously, you've got a passion for food, but I'll let you elaborate on that. But it was zenkimchi.com, and of course, this was before Twitter and all that stuff. So I wondered what your audience were, and did you get comments on there from foreigners, expats, Koreans, or did you get any comments at first and it took a while to start up? Something like that.
My original audience was my family.
Yeah.
It started out as emails from my flight from the U.S. to Korea, and I got tired of just emailing everyone, so I thought I'll just centralize it, make a website, because I have a background in tech. And then it was around that time I discovered blogs. Blogs were still a new thing in 2004. And I discovered food blogs. And when I discovered food blogs, I thought, well, these are great. So I went looking around for a Korean food blog, and there really wasn't one. So I created a food blog. And it really was just a record of my daily life and eating, what foods I've eaten or foods I'm cooking, either Korean, when I'm trying to learn to make Korean foods, or trying to make Western foods with Korean ingredients, because back then it was so difficult to find a lot of ingredients. So that's how it started. And a lot of my audience, I didn't have much of an audience back then. It was really expats. It was just other expats.
So when you say it was difficult to get ingredients, bearing in mind, obviously Korea has shops like everywhere else, would you mean difficult for a foreigner to get them, or there weren't that many fresh selling places, or around where... I don't really know Korea from 20 years ago, but I know it only from like 13 years ago. But did you mean where you get ingredients from? How does it change now?
So yeah. I mean, like one of the hacks I had was you would get a bag, what's called a sambag, which is a bag of different types of lettuces to make your wraps with, because each sambag usually had 1 or 2 stalks of celery. That was the only way you can get celery back then. Yes.
Why is that with celery then? Why was it a rarity? I don't expect you to know all the answers to why these, but obviously we have celery everywhere in England, in supermarkets. Supermarkets work differently in Korea. They're only becoming they're not really the same thing as what we have in England. So okay. So it's kind of a sambag, a bit like sambap.
For sambap. Like I call them sambags because there's all the sam.
It's your...
And really, because most ingredients in most markets were for making Korean food. Back then, Koreans were only interested in cooking Korean food at home. There were in Korean language. There were no Korean language food blogs. People weren't really exploring outside Korean food, so they were not interested in foreign ingredients. Anytime someone put a foreign ingredient, it would go bad. So I've watched this change gradually over the years. It's been very fascinating.
And so, yeah, just going back to that, when you did start the website and when it started to get some traction of some sort, did you get emails from people noting, either thanking you or either giving you, something you didn't realise about Korean food, and that they might have dropped hints? Or I'm interested as well whether Koreans. You were obviously writing in English, right, and I wonder, do you know what your demographics were for that, or did you notice over the years?
I liked it because I got pulled into a small community. The blog was, the blog was really just a small audience back then. I didn't even have a camera for much of it, so I had eventually I did get a camera, and this is before smartphones. I got me a camera. Then I think it was 2007, early 2007. New York Times contacted me. They were doing a piece on how Korean fried chicken was getting popular in New York, and what is this deal? What is this Korean fried chicken? So the New York Times contacted me, and we were on the phone for at least an hour or so. We were just talking food so much, and you can tell. You've talked to me. When I start talking about food, especially Korean food, I won't shut up. And we were having so much. And then when the article came out, like 50% of the article was me in my blog. And talking about my history with fried chicken and such. And after that, my blog exploded. And mostly, I didn't really get many emails. Most of these comments, I don't know. The comments have been okay. The comments have been generally good. Yeah. But when you're doing this stuff, you always remember the negative stuff. Yeah. Even though it's not as big as the positive stuff, you always remember the negative stuff. And
it's not like the internet has become now with YouTube and Twitter. You get negative stuff, whereas with a blog or website back then, it was mostly positive. someone's thankful that you've written something. You don't. Yeah, the negativity's changed.
Yeah, because people, if you're doing a blog. If you're perusing a blog rather than YouTube, it requires you to read, and people who read rather than watch YouTube videos tend to be nicer and smarter.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's it's you're not just scrolling, you're not just sitting. It's like sitting in front of a TV. People are only sitting in front of a TV and don't read a book. So I'm just going to move around a bit here with different subjects, but basically, as I said, that was about 20 years ago, and as you've confirmed, it was just over 20 years ago. But about 10 years ago, you were suddenly in London. Now, I'm not saying that was the first time you travelled outside of Korea, because it probably wasn't, but how did you get contacted about that event? Working with Korea Foods, you were working with Korea Foods rather than Taste of London, which was the festival, but how did that come about? Do you remember?
It really wasn't. You're going to be disappointed. It's really not that big of a story. Is a few years before, one of the executives, the son of the founder, Dan. I'll just call him Dan. He contacted me through my blog and said, the way you write sounds like the way I think.
Yeah.
So he showed up in Korea. So let's meet up for lunch. Hung out, clicked immediately. So every time he was in Korea, we would just hang out all the time, talking. And then the Taste of London was coming around. And he said, "Hey Joe, we'll fly you up here if you help promote Korean food with Gizzy Erskine.
Yes,
work with her."
Yeah. Well, that was that was part of the reason for asking, because I know Dansu, whatever, but because I was one of the volunteers that year, and it was kind of volunteered, but we were actually paid. But and the reason I was asking was that because food has started to change, Korean popularity had started to change, so that was a massive thing when suddenly Korea Foods, or let's just say Korea, had 10 stalls within Taste of London. There was Thailand food was already a thing in other countries, so that was the reason for asking, because I was then going to go on to how you think, either from maybe your website or even now your YouTube video, how do you feel, what have you noticed about culinary changes and trends now that Korea has become that place? It wasn't 20 years ago, it wasn't as world renowned.
Right. I tend to use the dividing line as 2012. BG and AG. Before Gangnam Style, BGS and AGS, yeah. Before Gangnam Style and after Gangnam Style.
Oh, BG, right? Yes.
Yeah, Gangnam Style really changed people's attitudes, because whenever people heard about Korea, they think North Korea, and this was such a big hit, just hit the zeitgeist so well, and so I noticed inside Korea there was more confidence. That was the problem with Korea promoting itself before, was it did not feel confident. It was trying so hard to, we want to please you so much. Oh, look, Gwyneth Paltrow made bibimbap. Ooh, and it would make the news that Gwyneth Paltrow made bibimbap on her little channel, or that Michael Jackson used to like Korean food. So they would make a big deal of this, and every time a Western celebrity came to town, they would dress them in Korean clothing and have them do. Oh no! After Gangnam Style, they had dress them in Korean clothing and have them do the Gangnam Style dance. Yeah. It was really embarrassing when we had Robert Downey Jr. doing the Gangnam Style dance on stage.
Well, yeah. Oh yeah, I'll have to see if I can find that a clip of that somewhere. But that's funny you say 2012 as well, because I was interested in Korea quite a while before that. But again, people were mentioning this Gangnam Style after I booked my flight, I think, to Korea, and I didn't. So I wasn't doing it because of Gangnam Style. And the reason I'm saying that as well is because in 2013 I went to Korea twice, and one of those was I actually did see Gangnam Style at this happening gig, a 3-hour gig, no alcohol, very different to England, no alcohol, like well, at least not the one I was into. In the UK, you buy beers, you go in and you dance around and stuff.
In the UK?
No, this was this was in Seoul Stadium.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's funny but not only that, 2012 we had the UK at the London Olympics, and again, Korea Cultural Centre, which was doing a lot for me and my research, were promoting the hell out of Korea. They had 12 film directors, one a month, and I got to interview all of them for my website, my minimovie.com website. And so I can see 2012, as you say, Gangnam Style was a big thing. But with regards to so that's when you saw the change. But what did you start? I'm not expecting you to remember 12 years ago, but what did you notice that people were maybe speaking about, apart from Gwyneth Paltrow's bibimbap, were they speaking about corn dogs? Because I don't really feel they're real Korean, but there's such a Korean thing when you're there.
So it was fascinating. I mean, I was part of it too. We're inside Korea, and we were watching this happening, like, what? Why is this getting big? And we couldn't believe how big it was getting. And we thought, well, this is a fluke. We saw that Dodger Stadium, they were playing it during the game. I thought, okay, well, it's starting to spread outside Korea. Then we started seeing bigger and bigger, and Psy was on all these big TV shows. It's just getting everywhere. And we were just watching this thing grow, because before then, Psy was kind of the Weird Al of Korea. He was kind of a third-tier celebrity. Yeah. And just to see this explode, when Korea, the Korean government and the Korean corporations, the ones that own the music companies, were preening and grooming these well sculpted acts to make it big, and this schlubby guy doing a silly song is the one that made it big. And so everyone's like, how did this happen? But I'm like this too with my blog or whatever, anything I'm doing. You can never tell what's going to go viral. I would work so hard on something, and it never gets any traction, and then that's something I just do is like, oh, this is a side thought I have, post it, and then boom, it's everywhere.
And so I mean, he did have a K-pop connection, or some manager or producer, wasn't he, of some sort, before, at the same time as being a solo artist, I think. But not that this podcast is about K-pop. That's not really something I want to talk about. But yeah, I was going to say. What did you start noticing? Maybe again in Korea, you probably didn't notice, but when people, did. It probably took a couple of years from that restaurants and places were getting starting to. I don't know if they were starting to change their food, because Korea already had the food. Oh, okay, yeah. So I mean, that would probably be more a question for someone who had visited Korea as opposed to you living there.
Yeah, it was really hard for me seeing it from inside Korea. We call it the frog in the well syndrome. The frog doesn't know what's happening outside the well. Right. And I was inside Korea, and I get to hang out too, because we're surrounded by water on 3 sides and a crazy dictator on the north. Well, anyway, I'll talk about that. I shouldn't say crazy because actually they're pretty logical with what they do. There's method to their madness.
Why don't we just touch on that while we're on North Korea?
How
much have you sampled? I mean, I've lived in Koreatown, UK, and there's not one or two. There's North Korean restaurants. Some have got quite a few North Korean workers. And I wondered, and in Seoul, there's lots of pockets of North Korean cuisine, or in certain towns. And what's your thoughts on the North Korean style food that you've eaten? Have you enjoyed it as much as the South Korean?
Yeah, I love North Korean food. So a lot of people think, North Korea is just tree bark, something like that. Yeah, tree bark and water. No, because before the split, North Korea was known as the fancy cuisine. There's the royal cuisine. Pyongyang was the ultimate of sophistication for Koreans. And they're known for the naengmyeon, the chilled buckwheat noodles, which are fabulous, and other dishes as well. But the big difference, one would say off of first glance, is it's not really as spicy as South Korean food, which is true around the world. Is northern cuisines tend to be less spicy, tend to rely more on wheat than rice. So North Korean is more about noodles and dumplings. Wonderful mung bean pancakes. Great. I mean, oh my God, these dumplings made with potatoes put into the skin, and it's so good. And it's just these fluffy dumplings. Beautiful stuff. North Korean food is very sophisticated. The bibimbap is different as well. Traditionally made with pheasant, but these days made with chicken. And instead of the spicy gochujang, you put in a seasoned soy sauce mixture. It's very sophisticated. I love it. I love North Korean cuisine.
Okay. I will say we haven't actually eaten yet, so we're probably both enthusiastic about food more than we would be. But it's difficult to be more enthusiastic than Joe is already about Korean food in general. But going back to when Korea became popular, and you might have noticed a change because you were in Korea, but you must have noticed the gradual influx of westernized food or fusion Korean food coming, or cheesed up tteokbokki, and that wasn't there before. Yeah. Again, I don't know if that was there when you arrived in Korea. Was there already sort of that? And pizza places and KFC had been around for years in Korea, because I remember it in Korean films from the 80s, 90s. But you must have seen brands popping up in Korea which were doing non-Korean food. I don't know if there's anything you can add to what I've just said.
I mean, the change I started seeing. Now, language always changes. Food always changes. So maybe people say this is not authentic. This isn't this isn't real. That's BS. Food is always changing. A lot of popular Korean foods were only came about in the 20th century. In fact, cabbage kimchi wasn't big until the 1950s.
Right.
Yeah. The whole idea of putting rice into that metal bowl came about from the Park Chung-hee administration in the 1960s. Oh God, I'm getting nerding out. Where they were trying to conserve rice, because Koreans used to eat giant mixing bowls of rice every meal. And you got people who made the standardized smaller bowl, which is used everywhere now in every Korean restaurant. That's from the dictatorship of Park Chung-hee.
And then you've also got, just while you're thinking there, you've also got these dishes, I can't remember the name right now, that have come from the soldiers that have been near the camps. The one with the sort of sausage in the soup. And what am I thinking of?
You're thinking of Bourdain chige. Bourdain chige. There are many stories about the origin of that. I call it spam and hot dog stew. It came about from people going into the base. Many stories about that. Some people say, it's from Koreans going through the trash. No, it likely was Koreans who worked on the base, and they would take extras that surplus, which tend to be hot dog and spam, because meat was expensive, and that was a good affordable meat source. And the story is that over in the north part, Uijeongbu, which is near the North Korean border, some guys came into a tent where a woman was making food, and he gave her the stuff, and he says, I want something spicy with this. I want to make a soup with this. I'm really craving what's called in Korean gumul, which is soup broth. I want that. So she came with basically a kimchi jjigae, kimchi stew, with throwing this in as the meat, and it just became a hit. and they gradually kept adding more and more products to it, and that's why you look at Bourdain Chige, and it's basically a 1950s army surplus food. It's like Spam, hot dogs, baked beans thrown in there, a little bit of these days a little bit of ramen thrown in there.
Like a casserole almost.
It is, but it's so delicious. I call it 4th of July in soup form. It tastes like a backyard barbecue. It's delicious. And so when okay, we're going ahead a bit, but when Anthony Bourdain came to Korea and I worked on his show, I highly tried to get Bourdain Chige into the show. And I told the story about that, and instantly that became part of the show. It became his favorite thing to eat in Korea. When he was introducing the new season of his show to Anderson Cooper from CNN, he cooked Bourdain Chige for him. Even Anderson Cooper was like, this is gross, this is weird sounding, but when he ate it, it was like, oh, wow, this is really good. When Bourdain came out with his cookbook, Bourdain Chige was the star recipe of his. He just fell in love with it. And I totally get it.
Wow. Yeah, well, a lot of people talk about Bourdain because of even Thai food. A lot of people come to Thailand because of him, and we didn't have him.
I'm in Chiang Mai right now because of him, because of a show I saw he did 21 years ago.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, we in the UK, we've had other people, because it's an American program, or Canadian or American. Sorry, USA. But we've got like Rick Stein, who does fish, and so Bourdain was a newer thing for me personally. We've got, of course, Jamie Oliver and people like that. Yeah,
Jamie Oliver's big. But what got me to Bourdain, I was freshly divorced in the U.S. in Atlanta, and I didn't have anything to do on Friday nights because I'm just really horrible with dating. So this little 20-minute show come on Food Network, and I just loved it because the host of the show, they would bleep because he was cursing so much on the show. Because food shows were always so pristine and so family friendly.
Well, there's Gordon Ramsay as well. He's known.
But that was before Gordon Ramsay was really that big. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, and he wasn't saying because he was angry. He's just using it as a colorful metaphor to borrow a line from Star Trek 4. But
that's where Gordon Ramsay kind of got the idea for being fowler with his language, that fuck this. So I probably shouldn't say that.
Well, Bourdain was always good. Bourdain, I like that because he was just so raw with the way he described things, and it was kind of poetic at the same time. Beautiful Hemingway-style prose he would do.
Okay, well, we're going to come back to Korean food in a bit, but let's touch on a couple of other things that you do and you co-run and what have you. One of those is a thing. You do the Dark Side of Seoul tours. You also do food tours. In Seoul, Korea. Joe's actually come from a food tour today here in Chiang Mai and other ones. In fact, while I remember, if you go to his YouTube channel, if you go to Zen Kimchi's YouTube channel, one of the last videos on there is actually a tour from several months ago in Bangkok.
It was a year ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, but how did they begin? How did that Dark Side of Seoul tours, how did they begin? And was that off the back of the food tours or the other way around? Or I know it's a kind of collaboration with Sean or somebody else.
Eventually it was.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the food tours came out first because, again, people were leaving Korea without really a good impression of Korean food. I'm like, you're going to the wrong places. You're going to all the places the government's suggesting you to go to. So we tried to get more authentic Korean experiences. At the same time, I noticed that Korea had no dark tourism. And I had a background. I used to volunteer at haunted houses. I love haunted houses. I love fun stuff like that. At the same time, I had a background in Korean history, and I was really disappointed at how they were showing the history in Korean tourism. They're very, very sterilized or full of propaganda. And so I wanted to create something that was what makes me passionate about Korean history, because I call it Game of Thrones in Asia. Very violent history, but it's also a reflection of the rest of the world. And so I create, and also back then there was nothing to do for Halloween, and I missed doing stuff for Halloween. So I created the tour in 2012, tested it around September, and made it go, and it did fine. And then over the years, it's just been growing and growing and growing. And then I think it was 2017. I was looking for more help because it was growing quite a bit. And someone introduced me to a folklorist named Sean Morrissey. Well, we met over beers, talked and cried. I mean, we just got into each other. We just until like 4 a.m. We just really got along with each other, clicked. and he's helping with the tours. Well, not helping me. He's my partner. It really is his thing now.
Yeah, and he puts together, it comes up on the Dark Side of Soul Instagram, like the comics that go along, like merch and that. But it's not just merch, it's actually a passionately made comic-related leaflet book. And I miss out on getting those. But it's a great thing to have, it's not just about the tours.
No.
Then there's the podcast,
Right.
Dark Side of Soul.
Yeah.
So he again, I don't want to dwell too much on something you're not doing, but he came up with a podcast idea, or
no, we're all, I mean, we do everything together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the podcast, both of us, I think we both had the idea. Comic books was his idea. What happened was, it was Corona changed a lot. We knew that our tours were going to drop, so we needed something to do, and we've been playing with the podcast idea for a long time, and let's try this out. So we worked out a format, we set it up, and it turned out to be nothing. It was like just as simple as walking. We just really were able to put together shows so quickly, so easily, because it's just the stuff we talk about over beers anyway. And we quickly got a following on that. At the same time, Sean has a background. He's always grown up with comic books, especially horror comic books. He's also a folklorist, and so he wanted to do horror comics based on Korean folklore. And we ran a Kickstarter, and within 2 days we hit our goal, and we got much more on top of it. And so we produced our first book, Weird Tales from Korean Lore, Volume 1. And then a couple of years after that, same thing, we did a Kickstarter. Kickstarter actually put us on their front page as their Kickstarter of the day. So again, did very well. It's now, I think it's being picked up by Total Publishing, is going to pick up our comic book now. Very proud of this. I was mostly involved in the background. Sean does the stories. We had Korean and Korean-Canadian artists doing the drawings. And I was in the background working on the finances, and I was doing the layout of the comic as well, making sure that, because I did have a background in pre-press and printing, so I was able to do that, set everything up for that. Anyway, we still sell the comics. We have them. You can get them online at darksideofsoul.com. So I'm going to plug. Okay. I'm going to plug the comics.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I didn't think about that. I didn't think they were still around. But yeah, I mean, once I missed one, I thought that was it.
Yeah. Volume 3 is on its way.
Oh, okay. Volume 3. Well, basically, I've got quite a few more questions, but I'll try to run through them as quick as we can. Okay. But regarding the Dark Side of Soul podcast, of course, there's the Zen Kimchi podcast, which is every now and again. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll see. There's
okay.
not really a Zen Kimchi. I've always wanted to do a Zen Kimchi food podcast. We did Soul Podcast. Soul Podcast was started in 2008, lasted a few years, and every now and then I've come back to it. I still have the domain, but the trouble is I just don't. I'm stretching myself thin.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The Soul podcast and the Dark Side of Soul podcast, which are two completely different things.
They are. I keep confusing them myself.
But like a lot of podcasts, like this Not So Korean podcast, of course, these episodes are found primarily on audio platforms, for example, Spotify, websites themselves. But then, because you just mentioned the Soul podcast, I've seen a lot of those episodes through the YouTube channel of Zen Kimchi, which is essentially
but now Soul podcast does also have its separate YouTube channel.
I might already be following that. I can't remember.
It did, at the beginning, no, but now it does.
Yeah, you've had some great guests. You had your regular female
had a few
presentator.
I had a few co-hosts over the years. When we started doing video, I had Emma Kalka, who worked in news in Korea. Yeah, she was really good, but she's back in the U.S. now. But they were really good at getting really interesting guests on our show. That was really fun.
Yeah, and again, I've seen a few episodes. I've seen the one with Annie Ko, which I know we've had on the Not So Korean podcast. Albeit it wasn't regarding her music, it was about the dog meat issue, which is something we could touch on because this is a podcast about food. But she's always a great guest on whatever podcast she's on. But just to touch, we'll come back to the dog meat thing in a second.
Did you mention who Annie Ko is?
Did I actually mention Love X Stereo is who Annie Ko is? I've known her about, about 11 years.
Great indie pop band.
Yeah, they're electronic pop indie band in Korea. They do a lot of work.
They're a duo.
Yeah, with Toby Huang. I meet them most times I go to, a lot of times I go to Seoul, as I do you, as of lately. But I was going to mention also the YouTube channel, as I say, it's Zen Kimchi, but it speaks about, you've had videos as different as ones about the Itaewon tragedy.
Right.
You've had a video about travel influences, fast food burgers where you try them sitting in your car.
Oh God, that was during Corona.
Maybe that's an embarrassing thing to mention.
That was funny.
Driving in Korea.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm mentioning all this is because I wonder do you have a favourite Asian or non-Asian place that you've visited? It doesn't have to be Korea, where you have experienced great food. And now obviously we're in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and this isn't a forced answer, but where is your favourite place to eat, do you think, in the world?
In the world
That you've been to, of course.
I mean, right now I'm in the Chiang Mai mode right now. So right now that's what I'm focused. I mean, really, it's my love right now. In Korea, I'd say the further you get away from Seoul, the better the food gets in Korea. I'm really in love I love Andong cuisine. Andong is a small Confucian town in the southeast. Very different cuisine. Jeju Island cuisine is excellent. And Busan, I'm rediscovering Busan, but actually Gangwon province to the east of Seoul. It's the most rural province in Korea, South Korea. And I think that's the underdog of Korean cuisine. I think it's because I think the strength of Korean cuisine is its rusticness, where you would say if Japan is Paris, Korea is Provence, and Gangwon-do is the most provincial of it, and so their food is very honest and rustic, and it just speaks to the heart. Okay. And that to me, every time I go to Gangwon, I just fall in love with the food every time I go out there.
Before we get on to the subject of, a couple more subjects. One is regarding owning a restaurant before, and of course, Love Exteriors, Aniko, and the meat thing. I would just want to mention about Jeju, because when I go there, I'm essentially vegetarian, but I do have fish. Jeju, 1 second. Just on that subject of Jeju, I do find as a mostly vegetarian, it's not the easiest place. Even Seogwipo town is not easy to find vegetarian food.
Right.
But it doesn't, there's a great Indian place in Seogwipo. But yeah, Jeju is famous for its chicken, pork.
No, not really chicken. This black pork and seafood and horse meat, which I do like. It's really good.
Yeah. So, before we speak just a tiny bit about the dog meat thing, because we mentioned Love Exterior, Aniko, and there was involvement with the recent dog meat ban in Korea. And we're also going to get onto the subject briefly of mukbang. Yeah. And we're also going to get involved with a little bit of finding out from Joe about running a restaurant in Korea as well, because he has been involved with that. A few other things, but so what is when the announcement, first of all, I'm sure you've tried dog meat. A lot of people in Korea have.
Yes.
I mean, Aniko has, and
she's tried it? I didn't know she tried it.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
If you check out our episode, 1 sec, there's a motorbike. This is Thailand, or a scooter, one like the other. Yeah, Annie has tried it, and if you do check out the episode with Annie in it, she actually mentions how that came about, and I think she used to go out, and it was kind of with a group of lads, and it's more of a men thing to do.
It is.
So it's worth checking out. I wondered, first of all, what circumstances it came about when you've done it, and also have you what was your thoughts when the ban has come into place, but how they monitor it is going to be another thing. But I wondered what your thoughts were when it was announced.
Okay, so I mean, obviously I'm a food blogger, and I've been known all my life to eat for eating exotic foods. So my first year, the opportunity came to try it during one summer. Korean friend, and wouldn't try it. It was fine. It was okay. Since then, I've only had it 2 other times. I don't eat it anymore. Been there, done that. I know what it tastes like. I've had good and I've had bad. And the bad stuff does taste like wet dog. But the thing is, I like the stuff that comes with it, though. That's what I kind of liked about it, because they came up with all these things to cover up the smell.
Yeah, that's what there's stuff. And again, now I know, I've eaten ostrich in Thailand. I've eaten bugs and stuff. That's another subject. We covered that in the episode with Annie. That different countries have different things out of necessity as well. But because dogs are
not companion. But dogs are companion animals. I mean, they're our friends, like horses too.
But at the same time, there was a desperation time of Korea when it would eat.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure you talked about with Annie, but it was medicinal food. It was to help you during the dog days of summer. Yeah. To replenish your what you lost through sweating, which is basically your electrolytes. So it's basically Gatorade in soup form.
Yeah, so we did cover that with Annie as well.
Yeah, the ban was totally a political thing. It was just something that was a pet project of the president's wife. She wanted to make herself seem relevant and try to distract from the scandals she was involved in. And so there's that happening. It was such an easy topic to get people behind. So that's what it was. It's very cynically political, but hey, it's been done. As far as enforcement, Korea likes to make rules, but not enforce them.
Yeah, when you said a pet project, that word of pet probably wasn't relevant. But also it was appropriate as well. So let's skip forwards to. Actually, I say skip forwards, but it's going backwards. Yeah, you've run. Not sure how many restaurants, but I was watching one or two interviews with you recently, and there was. I know already you've run a restaurant. Was it only one restaurant somewhere near the Cheonggyejeong stream area? How many?
I ran two restaurants. I had two restaurants. First one was an American barbecue place over in Mokdong. But my partner cheated me out of the restaurant. Then I became a freelance. I said, hey, this has happened, and then I just got all these offers in. And then one of the most respected fine dining chefs in Korea asked me to take over his gourmet burger place. And he wanted me to introduce my barbecue to his place. And so we took it. It was on the Cheonggyecheon stream. That was a good experience as well, but then again, with that one, I think it would have been successful if we just tried to stuck it out a little bit longer. But the location was really bad, even though it was on the Cheonggyecheon stream. It was just right. If we just stayed one block over, we would have gotten a lot more customers. And it was before all the delivery apps got big. If we stuck around long enough for the delivery apps, I think it would have gone fine. But it was a great. Both of them were great restaurants. They were featured in magazines.
Yeah,
they were fine.
And were they mostly Korean staff apart from yourself, or did you have a slight mix? Like, obviously Korea it's mostly Korean Koreans, but we are talking Seoul. Right. Was it Korean staff, waiters, etc.?
95% Korean staff, yes.
Yeah. And there was something interesting you mentioned in an interview regarding that time. You mentioned about providers, the supply chain and wholesalers that deliver to a certain area that kind of keep it going. So if you don't have a community, apparently you're saying certain areas in Seoul, the expat restaurants kind of continued because they were very working together. You mentioned that the Korean ones were kind of a bit more out for themselves, maybe competitive.
Right.
But it also hung on the supply chain that went to the area.
Right. So people say, like, why do always the same type of restaurant tend to be in the same neighborhood? I mean, why would you want to make the same thing as the same person next to you? A few reasons. I mean, I've heard one thing is when one type of restaurant gets really successful, people think there's something good luck in that area. So other people want to capture some of that good luck. But the other reason is a practical reason is suppliers, if they just go to one area and do most of their deliveries there, it's cheaper. Yeah. I learned that just from doing craft beer. Since our first restaurant was way out in a different part of Seoul, there wasn't many craft beer places. It was a little more difficult for us to get good deals on craft beer. If we were in Itaewon, the foreigner-friendly areas, would have gotten better deals. So I learned it from that.
Okay, yeah, that was just interesting. I just elaborated on what I'd heard about that. Now, obviously, when you were running a restaurant and when you've been living in Korea, you would have had to know some Korean language. Has your Korean language evolved over the years, or has it devolved?
I'm constantly working on it. For someone who's been here 20 years, my 13-year-old daughter keeps saying, "Dad, you've been in Korea longer than I have. Why is your Korean so bad?" Right. To Korean ears, my Korean's not great. I sound like a very slow 2-year-old. But I mean, my food Korean's really good. My reading is really good. I read better than a lot of Yeah, I read okay. Yeah, my trouble is I've usually been in situations where speaking Korean was not necessary, and so I didn't have many chances to practice. Also, when I do try to speak Korean with Koreans, I get this is so personal. I get discouraged a lot. They will laugh at me. People will laugh at me and at my Korean.
I think that's natural, when you don't know a language. I try it in Thailand and in Korea. People laugh at you.
Yeah, in fact I'm the person I'm dating someone right now, a lovely person, and she's Korean, and she says when I speak Korean that I sound like a woman. And she's making fun of me the whole time, and I'm like, this is why I don't speak. This is why I don't practice Korean, because you're saying stuff like this to me. I don't want to do it anymore.
I've heard that about relationships with Korean, non-Koreans, or any ethnicity with a non. It's just. But also your daughter. You mentioned your daughter. Now I happen to know one of your family members. I don't know them. Sorry. I happen to know that they are into food and maybe being cooked. But your daughter. I wondered. Well, you could either elaborate on that, since entirely up to you. But your daughter, has she shown any interest in that, or is her passion with food not quite the same as yours yet?
She's still discovering her passion. She has a new favorite thing she's into every month. Now, she had the advantage. I mean, I'm recently divorced, but she had the advantage of growing up in a household with two really good cooks. Both of her parents pretty good cooks, so she's really gotten a good diversity of cuisine. I did notice when she and I have gone on trips overseas, she's a lot more open-minded about food. She's not that passionate about it, but she's open-minded about it, and that's the least I can ask for. I do come from a family of people in the food business. My dad owned a Popeyes when I was growing up, and Popeyes fried chicken, and he also just a hobbyist with catering. So we all got the bug for that.
It's quite funny that he owned something that's fried chicken, and fried chicken is a Korean thing. Although I always think it's not that Korean thing compared to so many other dishes out there. So your daughter, and this is really to bring in influencers and mukbang. Your daughter's not into mukbang. She's not gone through that stage yet. And I wonder what your thoughts are on mukbang, and maybe just explain to people what mukbang is. Some people will know this already because it's highlighted a lot in the media, but I wondered if you could just say what your thoughts are.
She occasionally watches mukbang. She watches some really entertaining ones. What I like, she's watching this one YouTube channel, and it's a how would you say it these days? It's more of a transvestite than a
there's a few of those.
Yeah, more than transgender, because he's unapologetically deep voiced, or she's unapologetically deep voiced. Really goes to really cool restaurants and gets very passionate about it. It's a really fun YouTube channel she watches. But mukbang, I'm not I've learned to live with. It's not my thing. I get why people watch it. I mean, same reason I would watch Food Network is if I'm not eating great food, I like to watch other people make great food. It makes my food taste better.
Yeah.
So a mukbang came about as part of this phenomenon of more and more Koreans being single, eating single, when communal eating is embedded in the blood.
Yeah.
And so you get people that just feel so depressed because they're eating by themselves. And so mukbang came from started with this streaming channel called Africa TV, AFREECA, and people would give tips, money tips, and so people just came with the idea of I'll just eat live, and people can eat with me. I'll schedule it, and it just became a thing because people were just lonely.
Okay, well that's it. I kind of, some people know what it is, but some people don't. So, Korean traditional markets. I want to talk about this because food markets. There's some very famous ones in Seoul and elsewhere in Korea. But I mean, do you have a particular one that you love going to? They go off with all these angles in Korean. You know what I mean? What's the one, the big one that's
Gwangjang.
Gwangjang market. Yeah, that's. There's a woman there who's been on YouTube. On Netflix. But I just wondered, do you have a favourite one of those you like to go to?
Yeah.
And they're very Korean. I'm sure similar things exist in Japan, but there's something you can't go to Korea and not experience.
Yeah, not a big fan of Gwangjang. I mean, Gwangjang's fine, but it's very touristy. I go to a lot of markets. See, the thing is traditional markets have been dying out. So the government's been trying to find ways to support them. One is shutting down large chain grocery stores, supermarkets once a week. That's not been successful. That hasn't had any effect on it. But each market has been coming up with really clever ways of staying afloat. Tongan Market, which is on the west side of Gyeongbokgung Palace, they came up with this way of you can create a little bento box, a little lunch box, and they give you tokens, and you can fill up your lunch box with different vendors. Mangwon Market, which is one of those markets that doesn't branch out a lot. It's just one straight market. We go there on our chicken and beer tour.
Okay.
Really like this market. It's found a way to survive by inviting new blood. Young people come in. Young people come in, they make trendy stuff. They have trendy restaurants, trendy products, but they get their ingredients from the older vendors. And they've come with a few innovations as well to keep them really successful. My personal favorite one whenever I can go is Anyang Central Market, which is a suburb south of Seoul. Because it's got everything. It's one of those markets where you get lost in. I do tours there sometimes, and I still get lost in that place. It's got the Mangwon thing where you got young people coming in, revitalizing this place. It's got the old stuff too. In fact, it's one of the few markets that you can still find dog meat if you're looking for it. They kind of hide that. And it's got a really interesting nightlife. So the good market is going to have an interesting nightlife, where there are just places that only open up at night, and you go there eating and drinking at night. So Anyang Central Market is my favorite one for that one.
Okay. Well, actually, you mentioned something just now as well, which is things closing down, and something I noticed when I go to Korea. Well, one other thing you mentioned, and we're talking about markets, fresh veg and fruit seems to be so expensive in Korea, and it's not like it's imported. You know, it's, as far as I know, it's mostly grown there, and I don't understand the justification for that, but you might know something about that?
Okay, lots of reasons. Well, yeah, it was one thing that imported fruit tends to be cheaper than domestic fruit. Vegetables is another thing. Vegetables are better. It's just everyone's complaining they're more expensive than they used to be. It's all about distribution systems. There are too many middlemen involved in that. With fruit, I did a little more investigation on this one. Yeah. Because with vegetables, especially rice, they were able to consolidate a lot of farms into co-ops. Fruit, plantation, especially stone fruit, things with trees, not so much. So it's very disjointed, the whole fruit sector. Yeah. So it's just not economical. It's just very, because then you have a lot of transportation and storage costs is what's factored into it. Right. The only one is Jeju mandarin oranges, because they're all centered in Jeju in a relatively small location.
With
so
governing
so
province.
They're so cheap that people can't even give them away when it's mandarin orange season. But all the other Korean fruits, apples and pears and stuff, are still very expensive. I
know. When I go there, I try to be healthy. I don't cook anything in Korea really. I just I'm moving around, and but I do like to buy fruit. But it just puts me off a bag of some apples or whatever, bananas even. I end up buying in this, and I feel really guilty. I end up buying them in a convenience store, and they're not the great bananas either.
Well, bananas are imported, so they're really cheap.
Oh yeah. So that's not a good example, is it? Probably oranges. Yeah, oranges or satsumas.
But it really would be like apples. Persimmons a little bit. Persimmons tend to be a little cheaper when they're in season. That's one of the thing I love about Korea is very seasonal with the produce. There's a certain type of tomato that I love from the sandy island next to the Busan airport called jachari. They're salty tomatoes. They're salty and sweet.
Oh, right.
They're only available between March and April. Okay. And I love them. But little things are very seasonal there.
So that's Gimhae area. Gimhae?
Yeah, around that area. Yeah.
So and you mentioned something about places closing down or struggling to stay open. I go to Korea a lot. I'm on my 11th trip coming up soon. But the reason I'm saying it is I go back hoping to go to a favourite cafe, and it's no longer there. And I often think that I really admire these cafes that do open, even in Busan. They put a lovely effort into the place. And I wonder if I have a theory on this, and I don't know if it's this go-getting kind of Korean thing to open a business and become an entrepreneur, maybe overstudying business at university, and there's so many people that go to university. There's going to be a percentage that want to open businesses, and this is just my theory. But also the trends are a massive thing in Korea, and so if you open a cafe and because it looks a little bit trendier than another one, it might not last because trends move.
Right.
Anyway, that's cafes, and I just it's not more of an observation, because restaurants I like, cafes I like, I go back, they're not there. Is it because people are living for today and not for the future, or the get rich dream that we all have? I don't know if it's that, but that's
that's a reason I don't really review restaurants on my blog anymore. I haven't done that in a long time. It's too unstable. You get a lot of people that are forced into early retirement, and restaurants, one of the few ways that are being a taxi driver, is their only options to make money until old age. There's a lot of optimism. People think, if I build it, they will come.
Yeah.
The Korean government does that with a lot of things too. If we build it, they will come. And they think that they just build this restaurant, and if they think their food is good, everyone's just going to flock to them. And it's not really the case. We have one of the most competitive. Seoul does, especially, most competitive restaurant industries in the world.
Yeah. And also, I think, though, chaebols or conglomerates are not helping these individuals. Of course, that's everywhere in the world.
The government has stepped in to help a little bit, because one of the Samsung spawn started a cafe chain called Artise, and they said you have to spin that off out of the family. Samsung can't do that, because they would do the Walmart model, and they would undercut people on prices. They would use their power to muscle other people out. Starbucks has been really the only one that's been really successful. Well, Starbucks really started the whole coffee trend in Korea, and Seoul has more Starbucks than any city in the world. A little trivia right there.
In the UK, you might know this fact, but Starbucks didn't pay their tax. They found a way to avoid the taxes a few years back. So a lot of English people don't like them. Their coffee's not, in my opinion, their coffee's not great. Well, when I go to a Korean cafe, a small one, and their coffee is great, I'm like, this is perfect. Yeah. Why? There is one person I wanted to mention, because this is related to coffee, but also food, which is what this interview is about. Mr. Beck, Park.
Yeah.
And what I think he might be doing differently, he's obviously... Oh yeah, Baek Chung-won, yeah. He's obviously, now he might be a mini corporation in some ways, but he seems to make things affordable for Koreans. Whether it's, I'm thinking in like Pax Coffee, and I'm thinking rolling pasta, which you might not like, but it's a chain, but it does, in my opinion, it's quite a good price, where it could be CJ and charge double.
I don't know
what your opinions are.
I don't know. He's kind of. I don't know.
He's different.
In the food community, especially the professional food community, there's mixed views on him. I don't blame him for using his celebrity as much as possible because he just opens a lot of what we call just very mediocre restaurants. And he loves to put a lot of sugar in his food. Right. If you're familiar with the movie Ratatouille, there at the beginning there's this Chef Gaston, and he was very famous, but then he died. But the guy that took over his place just kept marketing his image for different things and cheapening his brand. That's kind of what Baek Chung-won's been doing. He just puts his face on everything.
But he's already a very well known.
But he oversaturates the market with over promoting himself.
Yeah, I read online he's got about 7 different brands or something.
Way more than that. Way more than that.
But some people
promotes other products too.
Yeah. Well, that's how he is, clever, I guess, businessman. But okay, I promised to come back to Korea. There's 2 more points I want to cover, and then we're going to literally go for food. Korea has, you mentioned in one of these episodes, I know this already, icha, samcha. When you go for a meal, you go for another meal, or you go for a snack. And you mentioned this in an interview because of an area that has restaurants that keep one another going by, I think there was something about giving promotions and vouchers to businesses. This was an old interview you did, I think.
I think I vaguely remember that.
But I always think this, that when if you've got a community or a dong or whatever, gil or road in Korea, it's quite a thing to go out in Korea, especially on a Friday and or Saturday night. You go, your first meal, your second meal, your third meal is samcha, sam, but you want it all to, you want it to be all in the same area. And and what I'm getting at here is, do you have a favourite area that in maybe I wouldn't say Itaewon because it's such a kind of
you don't do that in Itaewon.
No, that's what I'm thinking. But somewhere that you would recommend, or you have a favourite generally in an area. Is it Incheon area, or because that you'd like to go out in a street for the evening? Motorbike that you'd happily spend in a little community, a couple of streets where it's got
exactly gongdok. Gongdok. We tend to do. I've tended over the years to do a lot of my food tours in that area because it's really conducive to Ilcha, Icha, Samcha. I think one of the reasons it is right across the river, one stop away from Yoido, the business district, and so a lot of the bankers go out there to have their huishik, their after work dinners. We took Anthony Bourdain there, that area. That's really good for that. And so it's easy to design food tours in that area because it's all designed for restaurant hopping. The first place tends to be a real meal with rice. Second one would be more drinking. The third one usually be entertainment. Like a karaoke.
Yeah, karaoke, Norabang. Yeah. Okay, and there's. Yeah, so I there's loads of other questions I could ask. we could talk about. Chiang Mai is very well known for Koreans coming for 1 month living, which is handang sagi.
I was talking to a young Korean woman today. She was talking about that today. Yeah.
But being Korean, and they even when a Korean lives abroad, often the case they still want to find Korean food. In some manner, and of course some Thai food is very noodly and it's like Korean food, but they also might have a nongshim from the brand.
And I'm going to be guilty. I'm going to admit something right now. I've been trying to go full Thai this entire trip.
Yeah.
But I think tonight I think I need a pizza. I think my gut is saying. My gut biome is like, okay, you have too much exotic stuff in your system now. You need to have something more familiar.
Well, on that note, we could always pretend it's Korean food and pretend it's John, kimchi John, pajon.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it says John. Yeah.
Well, that's all it was really. I just wanted to say, was there anything you were missing? Have you been in Thailand now about a week?
10 days. Around almost 10 days, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there is a lot of Korean culture in Thailand. Thai culture. There's a big connection between the two countries, and I'm glad to have met you in Thailand.
Yeah.
Which has the amazing food, but we both have this Korean connection. Mm-hmm. So I hope to go on one of your tours. I've been on David A. Mason's tours, which of course he's brilliant.
He works with us. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, and he was also recently on Welcome to My Dong.
I Go Bart.
Yeah, he was on recently his channel.
Bart's thing, yeah.
But I do want to come on your Dark Side of Soul tours at some point. So, okay, well, I don't think there's anything else you want to mention. I'll put all your links in the description for what you do have.
Right.
And it's been great interviewing you and having a great catch up.
Great to hang out with you, Jason.
Yeah,
always great.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. So that's all from us. 안녕히 계세요. The original version of this video was uploaded to Jason Verney's YouTube channel, where it and many other videos, podcasts, snippets and films can be found. That channel can be found at youtube.com/Jason Verney.